What's up, Internet? We're here on a Monday to talk about something that's very important to me, and that was asked by Al's Fish Tanks. What was some of the biggest changes that have happened in my life from getting sober? And to try and make this into a short video is probably not going to work very well. So if you're not interested in this topic or this subject, or you want to hear what I have to say about it, go ahead and just watch the whole entire video, like it, subscribe, comment on how fantastic it is, especially if you don't like it, right? Is that how this works? I don't know. But I'm going to try and hit up some topics here, and I'd like to hit a few caveats right here at the beginning. I am not a doctor. I am not trained. I am not a professional of any sort. I am not trying to portray myself as that. I'm just here to speak from some of my personal experience from getting sober and what the changes have been in my life. All right, with that out of the way, let's get on to basically, I've got kind of 5 subjects here where I'm kind of just going to speak from the cuff. I don't really have a script or anything along those lines, so I'm just going to run with what kind of comes out. So bear with me because I haven't written anything down. So I might end up just kind of rambling a little bit. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the physical changes that my body has gone through. Being a guy who was a chef, was constantly on my feet, I've always been a fairly physical person. I do have what I would describe as a bit of a runner's frame. I'm a pretty lean kind of guy with pretty strong legs and whatnot. But I'm just under 6 foot, and when I did get sober, I was about 195 pounds. To this current incarnation of my body, 2.5 years later, I'm about 172, which I've probably got a couple of pounds to lose, fat-wise, and a couple of pounds to gain muscle-wise, but that's the difference. I was carrying around at least an extra 20 pounds in just straight carbohydrates, sugar, and everything transferred into my body into fat, which, regardless of the negative things that I had gone through from drinking and doing drugs, my body has taken the brunt and my brain have taken the brunt. I'm 2.5 years removed. At this point, I'm a lot better off than I was when it was day one. All right. To summarize the physicality part, I kind of trailed off and got on a whole nother tangent there. But to summarize the physical side of things, I've lost a lot of weight. I've got a lot more endurance. I'm a lot stronger than I used to be. I work out. We're active. We're doing things. Obviously, most people recognize the fact that I do a lot of projects. I do a lot more projects now than I used to. And overall, physically, I'm a much healthier person. I go to the dentist now. I go to the doctor now. I get checkups. I get things going. So physically, I'm in a much better place than I used to be. Obviously, I still need to quit smoking and do some other things in my life and keep going in an upward path. But I will say this. If my physical aptitude was a 5 before, I'm at like an 8.5 now. So that is a serious benefit that I see on a daily basis, just in how I feel physically, has metamorphosized into something that, like, I don't feel like garbage every day. And when I wake up, I'm at just awake, and it's just time to be awake, which is not how I felt previously. Which takes me to the kind of second part of what I wanted to talk about, which is my mental state. Now, my mental state used to be sort of angry, brooding, grouchy, just generally a shitty person, and very difficult person to deal with. Think Gordon Ramsay without the money or the blonde hair. You know, just to use a person that is constantly yelling and screaming at people all the time. No cuts on Gordon Ramsay. I'm just saying that's generally how I operated on a daily basis, and that is just not how I operate now mentally. I would say I'm in a much better place than I used to be. I'm not angry all the time. I'm not frustrated all the time. And I generally have a better grasp on just what it means to be kind of just in the middle kind of a person on a regular basis without going off the rails all the time like I used to. It has been wildly beneficial for my mental state, being able to get 8 hours of sleep uninterrupted with, I mean, obviously sometimes you got to get up and pee in the middle of the night, but I go right back to sleep. I used to have night terrors. I used to only sleep probably 4 hours at a time. I used to self-medicate on a regular basis in order to try and get sleep, even though the medication I was taking was what was causing me to not be able to sleep. I was constantly in a state of pain, which was not obvious to me at the time until I got sober. So the person I wasn't recognizing that's what was going on. But when I look back on how things were going on, that's the difference between now and then. I didn't know what it was like to feel a different way. That's how I felt every day, and it seemed normal to me. And now that seems 100% way out of the realm of how a person should feel on a regular basis. I mean, obviously I have happy days. Obviously I have sad days. I still do get upset sometimes. I'm far from a perfect person, but I am working on those things on a daily basis and trying to improve myself every day, which is not what I was doing before. I always felt like this is as good as it gets. This is how it's going to be, and that's not the mental state that I have now. The mentality that I have now is that I might be at step 1. I'm just going to try and get to step 2, step 3, up the stairs, and hopefully reach the top at some point. Whereas I always felt like just where I'm at is the only place I'm going to be. And my mentality now is way different than it used to be. And I have to admit that it feels good to not feel fucking bad all the time. That's just a big time reality of it. It feels good to not feel like shit. It just does. Let's go on to the third part that I wanted to talk about, which might be most relatable to especially Americans and first world people, the monetary side of it. If the physical part doesn't mean anything to you, if the mental part doesn't mean anything to you, maybe the monetary part means something to you. Without going into like explaining what I was drinking or what I was doing or whatever was going on, let's just talk about dollars and cents. I was easily spending upwards of $50 a day every day. So if you start doing the simple math on that, you can easily add up and just say that there's 30 days in a month. I was spending $1,500 a month. Now, in order to spend $1,500 a month, you have to make $1,500 a month. Now, that's on top of paying the regular bills. So you can get the idea of how stressful that is financially and how ridiculous that is financially. To put yourself behind an 8 ball that you constantly have to pay into the kitty all of the time just to maintain that standard of nonsense. Well, that's what I was doing. Nowadays, when I make that $1,500, that $1,500 goes into, for instance, like a retirement account. Now, the odd thing is that stuff starts stacking up. But also at the same time, I don't have to continue making these insane lifestyle choices in order to come up with more and more money in order to keep paying into something that was slowly killing me. It was for sure killing me, and there was no question about that. Even though I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not a doctor, I know that it was killing me. I know that it was going to die one way or another from that whole goddamn situation. And that's realistically the downside to it. The unfortunate thing is that I never did die. As far as, and I can say that while laughing now that I didn't die, because that's pretty much all I wanted, was to just not have to keep paying into this madness and keep doing that stuff. But I never did. I just kept going. So that's the reality, realistically. But let's just say $1,500 a month in savings. So there's a monetary aspect to the whole situation too. All right, now we're going to get into some of the kind of weird hooey kind of stuff. We're going to talk about community and what it means to be a part of a community. Let's just say I had a lot of friends. I still have a lot of friends. I had a lot of friends that only seemed to really be my friend because I was around, if that makes sense. It's not that there's anything wrong with those people. I'm certainly not judging anybody along those lines. But what I'm trying to say is, it simply was a geographical situation. Is that if you're around people that are doing something, they're going to want you to be around. Especially if you're doing the same thing that they are and following through on the same things that they're doing. And realistically, when you get down to it, that my community was really lacking. I didn't have a lot of people that necessarily wanted to show up for real life things. And a metaphor that I could put out there for you would be like, if you're moving, who's going to show up to actually help you move? Now, I'm not talking about, hey, I need help moving. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that those people that just show up because they're like, hey, yeah, you said you needed some help moving, I'm going to show up and do that. Didn't have a lot of people like that in my life. Not that I had none. I certainly did, but it seemed to be that like a lot of my friends and my community were people that were just sort of geographically close to me, if that makes sense. There's a big difference to that now. I have a lot of people that have a genuine care for me, and I have a genuine care for them. It's like, when you're going to show up for somebody and there's just nothing to gain out of it, there just ain't nothing on your list of what's going to be added to your life or whatever, other than just being in their life. I have a lot of people like that in my life now, and I'm very grateful for that situation. And it is definitely different than it used to be previous to getting sober. I have a lot of people that I could call right now and just say, hey, I need help with something, and they would show up just because. Which kind of leads me to the other kind of hooey part, which isn't really quantifiable. Like when I was talking about the community thing, it's really difficult because it's just an opinion perspective, right? It's just like, I can't write down a list for you and say who's important or who's not or any of that kind of stuff. Is essentially the same as the spirituality, right? Is that it's not something that I spent a lot of time on, and I'm not talking about religion. All religions aside, feel free to do whatever you want. It's just not for me. But my spiritual side is much more developed now than it used to be. It's not something that I spent a lot of time on, and it's not something that I can put in a bank account or show to my mom or whatever. You know what I mean? It's not a report. There's no report card for your spirituality and what you're doing. But it is a daily part of my life at this point to think about where things are going and what my relation is to my spiritual side, which was very much lacking before. To not get into any specifics, other than this one, which would be meditation, is a big part of my day in order to get through my day and just really balance myself out. It's not something I spent time on. When I was much younger, I did, but it's something that really went by the wayside and was really not all that important to me, and had gone away. And a lot of that has to do with the spirituality that I feel that everyone has in relationship to the earth that we live on. That I think it's very important for people to have that spiritual side in their life so that they can actually have some appreciation for something that doesn't have anything to do. And it sort of ties in with that community ideal that if you don't really have anybody in your life that is really importantly showing up for you without any kind of gain, it's difficult to just point it out. It's difficult to point out like who's important and who's not, and to like really write them down and be like, oh, well, this person's really important. Basically, until I got in touch with my spiritual side and my community side and figure out where I was going in the future. And that's all part of what I'm working on, and it's something that I'm constantly working on to try and move forward and see what I can do in order to benefit my community moving forward. It's very important to me, and it's something that I hope keeps going forward in the future. So we'll see. And I'm kind of getting to the point where this is the end of the video, if that makes any sense. But we're sort of at the end of the video, and hopefully this kind of like helps convey a little bit. Any constructive criticism or non-constructive criticism, go ahead and comment below. Let me know. Obviously, this is very rambling, and I'm going to sort of jump cut edit this thing together. And you know, hopefully it helps somebody. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm just an idiot and just a bit of a blowhard and a kind of a rambling moron. But let me know. And hopefully everybody out there has a happy Monday and a happy week and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be the end of the video today. Later.